Hi. In today's conversation, I'd like to talk about a question I often receive from early career medical writers who are either writing something for the first time to include in their portfolio or writing something in order to use it as a writing sample for the application process. And the question is, what do I write about? If I'm writing for the first time, what do I write about? How do I make sure that I pick a topic which is going to help me showcase my skills and represent everything that I can do in terms of a science communicator? I'd like to answer this question by echoing something that one of my mentors, had said to me years ago, which is write the article that you would find most interesting to read. So when you think about that, it clearly helps you make a distinction as to what kind of articles you should be writing and what kind of articles you should stay away from. If the kind of article is something that you would genuinely like to read as a reader, then that's the article you need to write, because it's easy to get confused in terms of which direction to take, what approach to use, what topic you need to write about. So a simple way of trying to solve this problem is to think of yourself as the audience and say, if I was writing to myself, how would I inspire myself as the reader? And then put yourself now in the writer's shoes and say, now that I have my audience in mind, which is essentially me, what kind of article will I write to inspire my future self who is going to be reading this? And the interesting thing about this approach is that it helps do two things. First off, it creates the ideal scenario where you can showcase your skills. And secondly, it provides a really inspiring setting for you to get started on the piece, keep it going, and bring it to completion in a timely manner. I'd like to provide an example of how I was going through this process. The first time I wrote a piece for my own writing portfolio was when I was in graduate school. And there was just a lot of talk going on at the time about gene therapy. And it was a new technology at the time. So I had two options. One is I could go with the flow. I could go with what was in the popular media and write something about gene therapy and describe to people as to why they need to pay more attention to this up and coming technology. Or I could listen to what my mentor said and write the article that I wanted to read. What I ended up writing was an article about a group of researchers who had used nanotechnology to develop these microscopic needles which could be placed on the surface of a band-aid. And those microscopic needles had the influenza vaccine on them. So when this band-aid was applied to the skin, that alone was sufficient to immunize someone against the influenza virus. What I found most interesting about this is that for the past 100 years or so, the only way to immunize someone was to put the vaccine in a syringe and inject the needle into a person and get the vaccine into them that way. This group flipped that concept on its head and began rethinking the purpose of a needle in medicine. And that is something which I found just truly revolutionary in the way it was conceived and in the way it was executed. And so I decided to write on that. Surprisingly, I ended up using that same piece as my very first writing sample for my very first role, and it was highly appreciated. The writing sample was highly appreciated. I received a lot of positive feedback, and I continued using the same writing sample for subsequent jobs and opportunities as well. So to loop back to the question of what do you write when you're writing for the first time, the answer could be as simple as thinking about yourself as the audience and writing the article that your future self would like reading. So think about that, and all the best.